And we're live. How's it going?
Well,
Good. Oh, wow. I still got that music going. All right. That countdown's always so dramatic. I just love using it. Okay. Hey, folks. It's Pete Paschal here, founder of the Media Copilot. We're doing our LinkedIn Live. I love to do these LinkedIn Lives pretty regularly on Fridays. We're live on LinkedIn. We're also actually live on YouTube and X and Instagram. So welcome everyone on all those platforms. So I just want to remind folks, I like to sort of talk to people who are building interesting tools and very cool platforms in the media/AI ecosystem. These aren't sponsored, by the way. These are just conversations I like to have with folks that are doing stuff with tools that I like. And today I am talking to the CEO of one of the tools that I recommend often, and it's AirTrain CEO, Emmanuel Turley. Hello, welcome, Emmanuel.
hello, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So like I say, I like to highlight these interesting, occasionally disruptive tools. And I want to just tell a quick story about how I found out about AirTrain, which is a funny story. So I've been teaching AI to creative teams and media professionals since January. And it was one of my early classes. I think it might have been like February, March, something like that. And I had a follow-up session with one of my students. And we were talking about which model might be good for this and that, and I had my recommendations on sort of whatever he was doing. I think he was doing something with social copy for a site he was architecting, and he showed me AirTrain, and then I had seen it. I hadn't seen it before, and I was just like, well, actually, I compared the outputs on this cool feature, this cool site, and he showed me the playground. So we'll get into all the things you offer, but I know you have essentially a free product that's the playground, where you can put it up a prompt and compare it across as many models as you want, really, and sort of just see how they do. So if you wanted to see how ChatGPT or GPT 4.0 versus 4.0 mini versus Lambda versus Gemini, et cetera, you could go all the way down. You could get all of them if you wanted to. And you could sort of see how fast they do it, what the quality is, and you can also obviously adjust the temperature, something you can't often do in the public-facing versions of these, which is sort of how creative it gets, and all of those things, which I was just kind of like, whoa, this exists, just like casually, like I could just log in and start doing it. So that was pretty cool. And so now it's something I recommend often to folks that just want to do sort of casual comparisons of AI models, and but I know there's more to it than that. I know this is sort of like, it's almost like the gateway drug to all the things you do.
Indeed.
I want to get into that in a minute. I do have a question though about the playground, really quickly. So it says I owe you guys about $10.
Oh, really?
So am I ever going to get charged with that? Is that like, I mean, how free is the playground? I guess you can compare it to a certain extent, but then are you going to start charging me under a
yes.
So
when people sign up, we give them $10 free credits just to get started, and $10 of inference of token is actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
So you can use it.
I've been using it since March, and I've built up.
There you go.
About
there you
that
go.
much.
It's inference is still quite cheap. So and then we also have a paid subscription for people that use other parts of the product, and there's a free trial for that for about, I think, for 30 days, and that includes, I think, unlimited use of the playground. So people could do that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious if you guys are going to start sending me a bill or cut me off.
I mean, essentially, the playground is not really a way for us to make money. So we're happy to sort of sponsor the community, if you will, in this way.
Yeah. But like I say, I think the playground's really great gateway drug to sort of getting into all the things you do. And I know you have a lot to offer, product teams and folks that want to do things with AI in a more custom way. So tell me about, like, there's basically about 4 different things that you offer, or at least 3 more that are major besides the playground. So tell me about, like, once you sort of like are convinced, oh, AirTrain's a cool tool, and I want to start, because once you start using the playground, you're like, what if I did this at scale? Well, that's like the next thing you offer. So tell me about that and all the other things that AirTrain is known for.
For sure. So the purpose of the playground is to do what's called a vibe check. So when people want to test how models perform for a particular task, for example, before building an application, they need to get a sense of what model performs best, because obviously not all models are created equal. Some are cheaper, some are faster, some are better. And so for a given application, you don't always need the best in class. Sometimes a worse model that is cheaper is good enough. And so your first journey into choosing a model starts with a vibe check. So that's the human check, if you will. So it's not statistically significant. It's just your own impression. So you use the playground for this. You interact with the models and you get an intuition of which one works best. The next thing to do after this is to create a more statistical intuition. And so for that, you need to collect an evaluation data set. So not just a couple prompts that you just invent yourself, but maybe a few hundred, a few thousand at best prompts, and then you can run it through our batch evaluation feature. So the models that are available on the playground, I think we have about 40 models at this point, are also available in our batch eval products. And the idea is that instead of typing your prompts one by one, you upload all of them as a file, and then you select the models you want to compare, define some metrics that you want to measure on those outputs. Could be things like just the length of the output, could be things like the sentiment of the output, or any kind of metrics that you can define in English. And then you run the job, and so we do all the ingestion of the data, the batch inference, and we evaluate the metrics, and then we show you the results in the UI, and that tells you at scale which one is the best model for your particular use case. That's the idea of the batch eval product.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's exactly. So it's like you have your playground, and it's sort of, if you're playing with it, you sort of get, oh wait, what if I did this, you know, if I had hundreds of these and evaluated, well, that's exactly the service you offer. And then, you know, because one of the big things, obviously, in applying AI in any kind of custom way is like, well, which model do I use? And you got to have a certain amount of confidence. And like, well, GPT Mini or Haiku, Claude Haiku is the thing that's best for this. And just doing a few one-off things in a playground, it's fine, but it's not really going to give you the kind of guidance and the measurable guidance.
Yeah, the playground lets you weed down from 40 models to maybe a handful, maybe 3-4 models that you think are good. And then once you have those 3-4 models, you can go to the batch eval product to really narrow down on the one that is best for you, and also do your trade-off in your mind of quality versus cost and latency and such.
Cool. And that would then lead to, you know, some more stuff like basically the other services you offer. So you can fine tune the models with your own data, right?
Correct. So this is not necessarily something that your audience may want to do every day, but it is a common practice in the industry to take a model and customize it to a particular use case. So it's not, people may have heard of RAG, retrieval augmented generation. The purpose of RAG is to teach new data to the model, or to make the model access private data, for example. But sometimes you may want the model to speak in a certain voice. For example, for creatives, it could be, I want the model to always speak like it's a Harry Potter novel, or maybe you want to do a medical chatbot, and so the model should be more empathetic, more understanding of the patient, more patient maybe, and so you may want to fine tune a model to behave more in a certain way. And the way to do this is to train the model for a little bit more time with data that is more specific to this use case. That's also something that we provide. It's entirely no code, so people upload a data set, select the base models that they want to fine tune, and then we run the job for them.
Yeah, and I think one of the big, essentially, goals here when you're fine tuning models is when you're applying AI at scale, like compute costs suddenly become a big concern, right? Like, I mean, it's expensive to run AI, you know, it just is. And in a lot of cases, I'm sure, you know, people are basically looking for what's the cheapest, smallest model I could possibly run to achieve the goals I want to achieve, and media companies included, right? Because, you know, if you have applying a tool to a large audience, so I'm just going to pick a sort of a random use case, but like the Washington Post has now a chatbot, right? And they have actually, previous to the general one they have now, they have the climate change chatbot, which is a very specific data set, which might even be a better example of something you might be able to sort of tune with AirTrain. You're going to want the smallest possible model to get you the good responses to the audience. And so to tune that with the right data and with the right kind of prompting at scale, you got to use, a tool like yours to kind of like.
That's correct. So it's been proven by academia, by researchers, that you can take a small model, something that's 10 times smaller than, for example, the GPT-4o, and make it just as good in terms of quality of the outputs on a specific use case. Not all use cases, for example, if you fine tune it on a high quality data set. For example, researchers were able to take very small models, like really a few 100 million parameter, and fine tune them on very high quality coding exercises. And the models eventually code just as well as the big models, the GPT-4os and so on. And so I'm using the coding example, but it could be any other application. So if a particular developer is really conscious about cost, then they could take a very small model that is extremely cheap and then fine tune it with a high quality data set on the application that they're looking to build. And then they will be able to save a lot of money, because the fine tuned model costs just as much as a base model before fine tuning. And the only additional cost is really to do the training job, which is not so expensive. So it's a great way to keep costs low, and also to have a faster model. Large models are pretty slow because obviously they need a lot of memory, a lot of compute. Smaller models are faster, and so you can get those small models to perform just as well if you fine tune them.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of applications in media are about summarization, and often that summarization, it's mainly you just want the right information, and you want that information to be accurate in those summaries. And so when you think about larger models, for example, OpenAI just released an update to ChatGPT that supposedly makes it better at creative writing, and that's great for GPT-4o. But you know what? Maybe like for something like the chatbots I was just describing that the Washington Post and others are doing, it's really more about the information. And so a smaller model just tuned to that information will probably do you fine, whatever it is.
For sure. Yeah, it's important to not always go for the best in class. I mean, as time goes on, we'll have better and better models, but I also see a future where we have a full myriad of models, hundreds of models, from very small to very large. And we won't always necessarily need to go for the best in class, because for some use cases, a smaller one that has been really tuned, for example, speak in a journalistic tone, be ready for fact checking or things like that, would be more appropriate than the big ones. Obviously, we're very much early in the development of AI, and so obviously everybody rushes to the best models. But I can see a future where New York Times, Washington Post, even government agencies will have their own models that is tuned to their data and to their tone and to the way they speak internally or even externally. So let's be ready for this.
So tell me about the importance of the data itself, right? Because that's a big service that you offer too. So if you have a data set that might be largely unstructured, you can turn to AirTrain and sort of get some not just guidance, but you can process it and basically get it in a state that it is that's more useful for tuning these models. Tell me about that.
Yeah, for sure. So as we launched this fine-tuning product last year, we started working with some early customers, and we realized that most of the time that they would be spending is creating this training data set. And it's also, again, been shown by researchers that the only way to get those small models to perform as well as the large ones is to fine-tune them on very high-quality data sets. And really, there is no escaping this. I've been doing data science and machine learning for maybe 10, 15 years at this point. And there's no sort of free lunch. The only way to get any machine learning algorithm or data science project to work, or AI is the same, is to get high quality data in the first place. And so that takes painstaking work, really humans to look at data row by row, understand the content of the data set, the balance of various pockets and niches of data within a data set, identify low quality data to maybe remove it or fix it, identify high quality data to maybe expand it. Really, this is the core of the work that data scientists and ML engineers do. And even, you could ask, why is ChatGPT so good? Well, there is no secret there. The architecture of the models has existed since 2017, so it's been a while. But the big difference is not only the compute, obviously, but the quality of the training data sets. So even the foundational labs, the OpenAI, Anthropics of the world, and Meta as well, the most of the time they spent is looking at data and creating high quality data sets. So this is the core of everything. So same thing for fine tuning. and evaluation as well. Even if people are not fine-tuning models, if they're building applications that are based on AI, then they need to evaluate them, which means testing them basically. And for this, they also need to create a high quality test data set that represents the data that the application will see in production. So for example, to take your example of the chatbot for the Washington Post, the people that built this chatbot needed to make sure that this would be a useful chatbot for its users, and that it doesn't provide spurious responses, that it has the right tone, and that it's polite, and all those aspects. For this, they had to constitute an evaluation data set with a few hundred, maybe a few thousand prompts. And every time they make changes to the system, whether it's to the chatbot itself, to the parameters of the model, if they fine-tune more, they need to rerun this evaluation benchmark to measure that, okay, there's no regression, the product actually behaves better, and doesn't regress on the important metrics. So this is really the core of quality in AI, is to have high quality evaluation benchmarks. So that also goes through creating data sets.
Cool. I mean, this all sounds, it makes a lot of sense. It's honestly, as a journalist myself, who's not much of a technical, not too technical, it's a little intimidating. Can you maybe, I think you might have something that you could sort of walk us through a little bit in terms of like what some of this looks like in terms of using the platform. And, as you're talking about, I might ask some questions, but I'm also like, I want to be sort of sympathetic to some of the people in the audience who might be like, well, I don't have a huge team, I don't have a lot of machine learning engineers, how could I possibly use this?
Yeah.
And is there some way to streamline the process?
So I think your audience probably is not made by people that actually build those systems. It might be
they have product teams and engineering teams.
Exactly, they have product teams.
They do, but it is so I think it's not irrelevant at all. It's just that they want to have a better understanding of the resources involved, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So happy to jump into the app and give a quick walkthrough. If interested, I also have some tricks that people can use to do the data processing themselves inside AI. Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the past, journalists and non-technical people always had to walk over to the data science desk to get some data processed, to extract some data. Now with AI, a lot of this can be done directly into those chatbots. So happy to also show this. This has been helpful for me even as a CEO. I don't need to write scripts anymore to do things like revenue trends or things like that. I paste data into those chatbots. I prompt the model to do what I want, and I get some nice plots out of it.
As also a fellow CEO, I might ask you after we talking for some of those prompts. But anyway, go on. Let's see what you have there.
For sure. So maybe I'm going to bring up the platform first. So let me. Just 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Up.
Thanks for your patience, folks. It's going to be worth it.
All right. So let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Share screen.
I think it's like there's a present button there somewhere in the.
Yep, and then Chrome tab. There you go. All right. Do you see my screen?
Seen it. No. Let me see what I can do here.
Supposed to show one Chrome tab.
Oh, here we go. I've got to add it to the stage. Right. Boom.
Perfect. There you go.
There you go, everybody. We're doing it. We're in
All right.
Train. Oh man, this is the first time.
There you go.
Awesome.
So yes. So this is the entry point of the platform with a number of tasks that you can do here. So let me first, I guess, show the playground. This is the first thing we talked about at the top here.
This is how I got my addiction.
New session here. So here we have a blank screen, and so we can add a number of models. So let's add an OpenAI model, and maybe let's add O1, which is the latest, most popular one.
Oh, and you got the temperature. I love the temperature.
That's right. Yeah. And then maybe less. I think the most powerful here is probably this one, and then maybe let's add an open source one just to be fair to the community. And maybe this one is actually a good one. Okay, so here we have 3 models side by side. So I'm going to prompt them. Do you have an idea of a prompt you want to try?
Well, man, now I'm on the spot. How about write some. I'll always fall back on social media copy. Write a tweet that talks about I don't know that.
Okay, let me. I think I have an
What's
idea.
some news that is not too
So
hot?
I'm French, and the French government just got rejected by the parliament. Talks
There you go.
about ways to about votes
Explain,
of no
non-confidence.
confidence in the French parliament. All right. So now I have my 3 models. Okay, so we can see already that Llama 3 was the fastest one. So here we have our 3 tweet drafts by the 3 models. So we can compare the actual content. So breaking, reports of several votes of no confidence. Okay, well, I guess this is more like a creative writing, because this is not exactly what happened. But
it's obviously we're talking about relevant news story in the news. That's right. A lot of these are just, they don't even access the internet.
Yes,
but they're trying.
But the name of the parties are correct. So that's what you get. And here's the one from Claude, and here's the one from OpenAI. And so below that, people can compare things like the number of tokens, so roughly number of words in each of them to see which one is longest or shortest. And then the tokens per second, so that's the latency, throughput of the model, how fast those models are able to generate content, and then the rough cost of those generations. So here we can see that Llama 3.2 is the cheapest. It's the smallest model, so that explains why it's the cheapest.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of the idea. So we can add as many models as we want here, and keep going in such a way. So one big difference between something like this and the actual chatbots that you can find on ChatGPT or Claude is that it's not really a chat here, in the sense that if I ask another question, I cannot ask a question on the previous generation here. So it's always kind of starting from scratch for every new prompt, because obviously it's very hard to have a chat with like 3 or 10 models. So that's kind of one main difference between this chatbot and the ones that you can find in ChatGPT. There's no kind of recollection of the past conversation. So that's one thing to note. So that's the playgrounds. Now, as we discussed, if people want to go one step further and do this at scale, then they can go to our batch evaluation tool here. So here we have evaluate model. In this case, people would select a file here. So we support a number of different file types, including Excel files. So would upload a file here, then you can configure a number of models. So same thing, I could here configure Claude and choose the variants that I want to test. Can add same concept. And then in terms of how to measure the actual outputs, the quality of the outputs.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, so we have here a number of evaluation methods that people can choose. This is where things might get a little bit technical. So the most easy to understand metrics are probably the unsupervised metrics, for example, the length of the output, number of tokens that is generated. Compression is the ratio between the input length and the output length to, for example, if you're testing summarization, you may want to be interested in that. Then we have some reference-based metrics. So in the case where you have maybe ground truth present in the input data set, so if you have the correct answer to your question present in your input data sets, you may want to compare the response that was generated by the model to the correct response that is present in your data sets. And for this, people use something called the edit distance, basically counts the number of characters that have changed between the correct answer and the answer generated by the model, and so on. One very popular way to
let me drill down on that one for a second. Sure. So is this sort of a way to help test accuracy in the responses? Is that fair to say? Or
so it's a very basic way to do it, because obviously you could have 2 responses that have almost no characters in common, but still express the same meaning. So it's a way to test really accuracy at the character level. So like, is it exactly the right output? So for example, if the task that you're trying to evaluate is like, for example, extract a particular word or a particular phrase from your inputs, then there is a particular phrase that you want to see in the output. In this case, the edit distance is useful. However, if you're more trying to test it at an abstract level, is this response correct? Then you may want to more use the AI scoring feature. So the most popular way to...
I see. Okay. Good. So there is at least a general way to do that, because I think that would be one of the main things that a media applicator would be most interested in, is like, is this accurate?
Absolutely.
Right.
So the kind of state-of-the-art way to do those things is to use something called LLM as a judge. So essentially, we use another model to judge the output of the model we're trying to test. So typically, we use the best-in-class model to do this. The GPT-4o, for example, is a really great judge, and we ask the model to rate the outputs of the model we're trying to test on a scale of 1 to 5. It's called the Likert scale, and then we can draw a distribution of the scores to compare the entire data set at once. So let me show you some examples of some results so that you could get an idea. I think this one might be good.
Okay, well, some article highlight extraction. This is good.
Yes,
this is very media-centric.
Exactly. So in this one, we have a data set of, I think, 2,000 articles from CNN. It's a pretty old data set, so it's articles from 10 years ago, I think. And we prompted the models to extract the top 3 highlights from the following articles, and we asked each highlight to not contain no more than 2 sentences. For example, here we have one article about cats. Street pooch in Washington State has used up at least 3, whatever, some story about cats in Washington State.
I think that might be in another tab. I don't think we're seeing what you're looking at.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yep, there you go. Showing this tab.
Cool.
Yeah, so here we have the data set here on the bottom left, so 2,000 articles, and on the right here we have results for. So we're comparing 3 models, so Llama 2, Falcon 7B, and FLAN-T5. And so we are
sorry, what was the prompt here? So you're trying to find a highlight, right? Is that correct?
Correct. So here's the prompt. So for example, please extract the top 3 highlights from the following article. Each highlight should contain no more than 2 sentences. And then we actually include the article
in the article in
the prompt.
Yep.
That's right. And then the outputs. So we have 3 models. So we have 3 prompts, and then the actual inferences. So here, for example, this is the output from FLAN-T5, a pretty old model that's not so good. And then here we have Llama 2, which is a bit better. We can see the 3 highlights listed here, itemized. And then the last one here is Falcon 7B.
That's a little too much on that. Was it Llama 2 in the second one? I always feel like some of these LLMs just give you too much.
That's right. It's too much. But what I like about this one is that
Llama.
Yes, too much information, but we asked for 3 highlights, and in this case, we have exactly 3 highlights that are itemized.
Okay, sorry.
So that's pretty nice.
So wait a minute. So take me through the graphs up top. This is actually really fascinating to me. I like to drill down a little bit in the weeds here.
For sure.
How do I look at those and sort of judge what I should sort of steer towards?
Yes. So we defined those metrics in plain English. So we used LLM as a judge. So we prompted the judge model to evaluate those quantities. So groundedness, for example, I apologize for the messed up UI here, but here, for example, the score describes how grounded the highlights are in the original article. The following is the original article. So this is the prompt that we gave to the evaluating model, the judge model, to figure out whether the article was the highlights were grounded.
It sounds loosely this is close to accuracy. You know what I mean? Like
exactly, yes.
Right. So then formatting. What am I looking at there?
Yeah, formatting here. The score describes how many highlights were generated. And so
that's what I was just criticizing. So it's less than 3, more than 3. So we always ask for 3, and got it. So 5.
That's
3
right.
highlights were generated. It looks like with Llama was the best, right?
Yeah. So Llama was the best in almost 100% of cases.
What's the other blue one again?
So the other blue one, it's actually green, like it's still green. It's yeah, Falcon 7B. It's an old model as well. This result is from last year, but this job is from last year. So the
highlight length, that's just the overall length.
So that's actually the number of sentences that were generated. So again, here we created this rubric. The following is a grading rubric to use. Less than 3 sentences were generated, so a score of 1, all the way to a score of 5. 6 sentences were generated. 6.
Well, it's higher better here. What did we want? We wanted 3
sentences. So higher is better because we have 3 highlights. Each of them have 2 sentences, so we should have 6 sentences in total.
Oh, well, go Llama.
And so once again, we see that Llama is pretty good, and that Falcon was actually pretty bad. In most cases, we only had a score of 2, which corresponds to 3 sentences, so only 1 sentence per highlight. If we were trying to select a model for this use case, here we're like, well, Llama 2 seems to be the best in this case. Yeah, at least at the time we ran this job.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. I totally get it. Like this, and how this would be super useful. Like again, like playground's fun, but you really need to know how it's doing at scale to make a confident choice in what model you're using. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so to go back to the next things that we do, so we also have fine tuning, but I'm going to jump into our data product because it might be more interesting to your audience.
Okay,
So
let's
as I
quickly do
mentioned,
that.
yeah, so as I mentioned, the core of fine tuning a model correctly or any other task in AI is high quality data sets. So we created a data platform for people to upload their own data sets and do some creation on it. So these are public data sets that anybody can take a look at. But people can also sign up and upload their own data set, which will obviously remain private. And so here we have this data set of CNN articles that we discussed earlier. So we have 50,000 CNN articles. And after we've uploaded this, we extracted some insights from this data. And so, for example, we ran our clustering algorithm on this data set that identifies the different buckets of data topics that are present in the data set. And so, for example, here we have about 4,000 articles that talk about athletic achievements, international sports, Formula One racing, tennis, and so on. And we can filter
this is all inferred from the content, right? This isn't like
correct.
tags or whatever, because a lot of
Correct.
obviously media companies tag things, but it's usually not great. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what we call unsupervised in the sense
Yeah.
that we haven't told the AI anything about those articles. We just asked our algorithm to cluster the various articles into kind of groups, and then we were able to label those clusters with the labels you can see here.
Nice.
And then we can easily filter. For example, if we want to look at all those 700 articles about Formula One racing, we can easily filter down on those. So here we have 700 rows that talk about Formula One. So here, talk about Lewis Hamilton, Chinese Grand Prix, and so on. So it's a great way to get a drill down into a data set and look at like very niche parts of it. So it's very useful when you have very large data sets and you don't really know what's in there and you want to really drill down into it. So that's kind of the idea of this.
Yeah, super fascinating stuff. Thanks so much for walking us through that. I think I definitely have a better understanding of not only how it works, but how media companies would apply this to their AI applications. If you don't mind stopping the screen share, I'll just finish up with maybe a couple of high-level questions. I know we've already been talking for about 30 minutes here, but it's a super fascinating discussion. I'm really glad you showed us that. So one question I had is that like the sort of whole existence of AirTrain, and again, the not the whole existence, but a big primary use case is like being really smart with how you're applying the resources you're allocating to AI and ensuring the models you're using, you're not doing essentially overkill. But that sort of points to like sort of a bigger picture issue in AI that a lot of people are talking about as well. Is it a bubble, right? Is there so much being spent? Is there ROI not there broadly in the industry? Because there's even go to OpenAI and how much money they're burning through, and whether or not they can actually sustain that in the long term is kind of an open question. This seems to happen every 3 months or so, that there's a lot of talk about a bubble, and but I don't think it's ever been definitively answered. I mean, whenever there's a breakthrough, there's always more costs, and then I imagine people sort of turn to your services like yours to ensure they're doing this. But what is your take generally on the direction? Is I imagine you're seeing good demand because of those trends, but what does that point to a bad trend overall? What's your take on the bubble?
So I mean, I would start by saying that anybody that tells you that this is all a bubble, forget about it, or somebody that tells you you should get on it right away, might probably be incorrect. And the truth is always in the middle. However, in this case, I don't think it's a bubble. Obviously, the way that people throw money at it, or the way that people build products on top of AI, that most of them will become obsolete or not even go to production. There's definitely a hype aspect to it that is inherent to any new technology. I think a very good analogy is the dot-com bubble, the 2000 dot-com bubble. Everybody and their grandmas had websites suddenly, e-commerce products. Most of them died, but now 20 years later, e-commerce is the majority of commerce. Maybe not the majority, but a large part of commerce. And 10 years after the dot-com bubble, you had AWS and Amazon. Amazon was the biggest e-commerce platform on the planet, and AWS, the kind of compute part of the Amazon business that basically services all of the tech industry, is a powerhouse of revenue. So of course, the environment in which we are now has a lot of hype. However, it would be foolish to ignore the kind of transformational aspect of AI. So I would encourage people not to dismiss it for hype. Of course, there is hype, there is noise. It's annoying how everything is AI flavored now. However, I would encourage everybody to weed out the noise and focus on the signal and kind of try to keep in touch with the technology, both in terms of where it's going in as an industry, but also how they can use it themselves. Because it is true that it will disrupt how people work, especially journalists. And so it's important that journalists learn how to kind of tame the beast, if you will, so that they can be those that kind of survive and use it in their work and to make their work better, work faster, and so on. So I know it's not a black and white answer, but I think the truth is in the nuance here.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't have said it better myself. With like taming the beast, you definitely, it's here, it's happening. You just got to kind of figure out a way to deal with it. Just to wrap up things here, like looking forward again to the way things are going. Pick any sort of mini trend you want, or whatever you want. But if you'd like to see AI and the various aspects of it, would you like to see one shift in the AI industry toward something else, something different from where it's on course now? Well, what would it be? What would you like to change?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit concerned by how some AI companies are talking about adding ads to AI products. The internet was free for a long time, and then the reason why it was free was because our data was being harvested to sell to ad companies, and this is how Facebook made money and all the social media companies. And so I would hope that this business model of not charging the customer, but not charging the user, but making the user the product of some other customer, I would hope that this would not replicate this time. I think people already pay for ChatGPT, and so I think this is a good pattern that if people want to use a product, they should pay for it and not have any their data harvested or being sold ads. The reason why the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all those data leakage problems came from the fact that people were not paying for their products, and so the money had to come from somewhere else, and that was selling data to kind of nefarious players. So I hope that AI-based product will remain sort of we continue charging the users for it and not add ads to their products. That's one thing. Another thing that I really care about is to keep making AI human-centric. Obviously, we're a bit of a turning point in civilization here, and I'm sorry for sounding dramatic, but AI is very transformational in a way, and so it could be used to further inequalities, make the successful and rich people richer and more successful, or it could be used to solve a lot of humanity's problems. Medicine, even climate change, nuclear energy, nuclear fusion could be solved by AI at some point. So I hope that AI will remain human-centric, so human benefits at the center, and not just squeezing every last dollar out of everybody and selling us the next gadget, for example. So that's kind of my hope for the future.
Nice. Well, I think we've been talking for almost 45 minutes now. I think it's this has been great. I really appreciate showing us everything that AirTrain can do for teams, as well as your perspectives on AI broadly. So it's airtrain.ai, right?
That's right.
All right. If you want to check it more, and it's also mediacopilot.ai if you want to perhaps tame that AI beast, and you are a journalist or media professional. Yeah, let me know and I can help you. All right, folks, this has been the Media Copilot live on LinkedIn. Please give me some feedback if you want to see more of these or want some different content. Just let me know. All right, folks, have a great weekend.